Yeah, Coach Kia. What up? Talking about that good money. What we talking about? We talking about philanthropy. Coach Kia Kroon playing A, B, and a C. It's no fantasy. She can make it reality. Best in the field like a first string athlete. Fundraising and marketing, she get tactical. Tackle your issues with a playbook so your cash can grow. She can show you just what to do. Coach Kia Kroon, when she touch down, it's a W. Coach Kia, put me in the game, coach. Coach Kia, put me in the game, coach. Coach Kia, put me in the game, coach. You an all-star, show me how the game go, 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 go.
How you doing out there, good people? It's Winning Wednesday. Where you winning from? How you living out there? So, I am happy to know that you're on the line today, making it a good day, a Winning Wednesday. And I want you to know that, because I was asked by a good Judy, a good girlfriend of mine, why it's important for me to bring some of the guests that I bring to the Fundraising and Marketing Playbook. And the reason being is I think it's really, really important to converge the worlds of fundraising and marketing. I feel like as fundraisers, as so many of us are, we do a fair amount of marketing, but we don't necessarily call it that, right? And in particular, for fundraisers of color, we aren't always in organizations that have the resource, that have the budgets to pay for the marketing conferences where we can kind of upskill and, retool and learn those best in class and next in class marketing and fundraising practices. So it's my effort and pleasure to bring people to you in this space to ensure that you're not missing out on that critical brain trust, right? That you're at a minimum being introduced to fundraising and marketing tactical strategies so that you can win, right? We know what I say, just win, baby. And that's what this is about. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, just want to welcome you to another Winning Wednesday. Can't believe it's March. I want to lift up my sponsor and partner, Bonterra, and my gratitude for their support of this podcast. Bonterra is a social goods software company dedicated to powering those who power social impact with best-in-class case management, corporate social responsibility, and fundraising and engagement solutions. And of course, the Fundraising and Marketing Playbook is also brought to you by Kia Kroon Fundraising and Philanthropy, a Black woman-owned consulting firm that's rooted in equity and inclusion. Why? Because inclusion is as inclusion does. And we're on a mission to work with organizations that are fighting structural inequities to improve community outcomes and conditions for people of color. That's what we do. So I want to quickly get into today's episode, y'all. I am joined by Mr. George Jackson of GQJ Grants and Media Services. He's coming through with a winning tactic that you definitely want to have in your fundraising toolkit. Mr. George Jackson, you are on the mic. What's the play?
Thanks, Kia. Well, today's play is the importance of writing strong grant case statements.
Talk about it.
Okay.
Talk about it.
Okay. Well, just for those who may not know or may not have a full understanding what a case statement is, basically a case statement is a document where you make your case for supporting any programs, projects, or the organization or the mission. If you've never utilized one for grant writing, it's time to start. And and I hope in this conversation today, Kia and I can show you how useful these case statements are and how to integrate them into your grant writing process and system.
All right, it works for me. I have crafted a fair amount of case statements over the last 22 years. And just like you, George, I swear by them. Talk to the people on the line and, folks that might view this at a later time about what those critical components are that make a compelling case statement. What's your process, your jam? How do you what are those key ingredients that make that case statement?
Well, when it comes to grants, I imagine a case statement as a living document. And that implies that it should grow and develop along with whatever program, project, or organization is intended to support. So for me, a case statement at the very least should include these few things. It should answer the most frequently asked questions found in the grant RFP or the request for proposals. It should have a logical storyline that's woven through the sections and answers. Uh, you need to have relevant data, research, statistics integrated into logical places throughout, which establishes your need for for your program. And lastly, well, actually, in addition, uh, relevant data that or information that's threaded through the narrative sections that emphasizes why funder support is vital to make your project or program come to reality or to continue going.
Agreed. You mentioned a couple of things that are really, really important. Okay. You mentioned compelling data points, right? First off, you mentioned that this is kind of an iterative deal, right? I want to go back to that. A living document. When we think about all the wonderful documents that we create in this space, right? Be it a fund development strategy or a fund development plan, be it a case statement, I'm of the mind that these documents, right, should always be within reach and always be considered iterative. Why? Because sometimes we have to change things, sometimes we have to pivot, right? And I'm of the mind that as you think about the different iterations that you might have of some of these documents, depending on who some of your stakeholders may be, it might not be a bad idea to version some of this. What are your thoughts on that? For instance, if you've got a stakeholder that's, an academe or something like that, right? The case statement may very well read differently than if I'm engaging a corporate or a private philanthropy, right? What are your thoughts about versioning?
That's a really great point because in my experience, one of the most important things about or that a fundraiser should be able to do is to be able to pivot when necessary, being flexible, being agile, so to speak. So when 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 faced in a scenario like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
I think that it is very, very important that that you make sure that you really get to know the funder as much as possible beforehand. Really read through that RFP if it's available. Read it, every page of it. Something that's important also is for that particular funder. If it's allowable, try to reach out to that funder through whether it be through email, or a phone call, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Because most funders that I've dealt with, or tried to reach out to, they're more than happy to answer questions, or help you sort of craft your uh, your whether it be your case statement, LOI, or proposal, and help you to understand what their priorities are.
Sure.
And and to be and it's okay to have some boilerplate language. I think that's great. That's fine. But I think when you're trying to get your message out there to different funders, who may have different views, different priorities, or maybe just a different slant on on the particular topic that you're trying to address. I think it behooves us to be able to uh, research and really find out what they're really looking for in a project.
No, this is good. And you lifted up a couple of things that I think are really, really important. One being to number one, obviously, we want to make sure that we know all the mechanics of that, all the technical requirements, right? Get really familiar with that RFP. And I would add to that, if it's not necessarily an RFP, if you're engaging a philanthropy based on some information that's on their website, to still read that information through the lens that you would assess and digest an RFP, right? Something else that you mentioned that I always encourage people to do is to reach out and engage a philanthropy. And the reason I want to hang out here for a minute, George, is I suspect that you've been doing this work for some time. You're a seasoned consummate professional. I remember a time when you were training, to write grants or professional development opportunities, and fundraisers were encouraged to really not bother or trouble the busy philanthropies. And if you call them, you'd better literally know and have everything buttoned up that you want to say, because they're writing a list and checking it twice like Santa Claus, and it'll give you a demerit if you don't come correct, if you will, right? And I just remember being kind of coming from a position of, what's the word I'm looking for, George? A place of kind of a beholden, fearful mentality where you're coming up with your hand out, instead of coming to lock hands and say, listen, I represent this organization, and this is what we're doing in this community. We know this community. We've included the data that you talked about in the case statement. We included details about who we are and how we're making an impact, right? And really hold my head up and sit in an upright posture and approach that philanthropy as a partner in this work, right? That's a mind shift that I had to pivot and kind of unlearn some of what I was indoctrinated in very early in my career.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that because early on I was taught or of the mind that uh, that um, that I guess we were kind of trained to put these people, these philanthropies on a pedestal.
Right. That's what exactly.
Yeah, and I think that many of us as fundraisers and development folks kind of came out of that school of thought. But from my experience, I think that that paradigm is changing, and it should change because it's exactly like what you said about viewing our funders as partners, because as we're working in and for various nonprofits and causes,
Absolutely.
that that we can't do the good work we want to do without each other.
We're interdependent.
Absolutely.
We're inextricably, um, bound in this relationship of interdependency. I don't want to digress from what you're sharing, but I always appreciate when my colleagues lift up that engagement piece, because I intend to disrupt that school of thought if that's still being posited to development professionals. Look, we want to look at ourselves as partners in achieving a social impact and flex that muscle, because at the end of the day, no one knows our communities the way that we do, right? So back to what you were saying, you mentioned a few things. If we want to revisit them, I heard you say data. I heard you say, help me out here.
We talked about relevant data and research,
Yes.
and we talked about, or I mentioned, in being able to craft a narrative with the information that you have to tell a
Yes.
story. So, so I think to kind of go back to relevant data and research, a strong case statement um, uh, will always have numbers. I mean, and when I say numbers, it could be a variety of different things depending on what your what your project is or what your cause is. For example, if I were writing a case statement for a an autism uh, rehabilitation program
Mhm.
for kids, what you what you want to do is do your background research and and make sure you convey, okay, so in for example, if you say in the state of Michigan where I am, uh, so many thousands of uh, children go undiagnosed with autism
Mhm.
every year, and in order to help these, we need more dollars to put into diag- diagnosing and also treating and also supporting these children and their families. And it's going to cost this much so we can reach this many families. So really understanding the why, the background research, why is it important, and understanding that uh, what that funder can do to help improve that situation, help us be a partner and improve that situation.
Yeah, I'm hearing impact.
Yes,
What will
yes,
you
absolutely.
be able to accomplish, right, with this support? And that's the major key, is what kind of impact you'll make is what I'm hearing.
Right, absolutely. And I'm glad you used that word impact, because that's a word that we as fundraisers, we hear it now all the time, and we'll continue to hear it because um, most because philanthropies and funders, they they look at metrics as well for on their end. So if the more compelling metrics you can provide about the impact of what their dollars are doing,
Yeah.
uh, the the more amiable that they would be to fund your program. So, and and also, I think it's important that, and one last note for about data and research, you really need to make sure that you include in the case statement, you make certain that the age of the sources is relevant to your point.
Yes.
So, because if I'm using data that's 10 or 15 years out of date, um, that doesn't really give the reader uh, uh, a well-formed picture of what the current situation is, and and always updating and checking these things and
Mm-hmm.
using your own um, internal data that you may collect or your organization may collect through its programs, and also high level information. What are the national trends?
Right.
And I think those things are really important.
Uh-oh, I hit doing too much over here. Hit a button and it taking you off. You know,
Okay.
I'm not afraid to own my errors. But no, that was a very salient point. Don't be using no dated data, right? Or data. Make sure that we've got relevant data. And I think that I really like what you shared about, that data, on the importance of that regional data, because we know that there are folks on here that work for organizations that they may have founded and they're working across their region, but there are also those fundraisers that work for organizations that have not only a regional presence but a national presence, right? And in my lived experience as a fundraiser, even in my national fundraising efforts, right? Working with national philanthropies. When I'm working in a particular region, those regional business units, I don't care if you're a petroleum company, I don't care if you are a restaurant chain, right? My experience has been that regional metadata is really, really important and to those regions, right? Um, that national data is important to those national entities, right? But
Right.
what I guess the short of the long is, you want to make sure you're speaking to the issues, right? That you're aligned with, that regional or national prospect in terms of what the data is telling, right? The data paints the picture. And I think that that's really, really important to live. So thank you for doing that. So we've got relevant data points, right? We've got impact data in terms of, what impact an organization forecasts or predicts or hopes to achieve with the support of this funding partner, right? What else would you
Absolutely.
add, if anything, to that mix?
Aside from or in addition to data, what we talked about. Um,
Yeah, if you have any other
yeah,
components that you think we should, take a few minutes to share.
yeah, sure. So I think that in addition to those things, um, using your case statement will allow you to organize your thoughts and the data into a thoughtful narrative. Because if you're not telling a story in your narrative, whether it be your case statement or or a general proposal, um, it's really important to be able to personalize or humanize, and, as you said before, paint a picture of the situation that your organization is trying to address or trying to solve. And I think using devices or tools like testimonials,
Yeah.
using things like example success stories, um, using on the other side of that, you may use a story about someone who may be in need of, or what is their situation, and how did this organization come in and help them with it, and make that impact that we talked about before. So I think it's fine to have all this data, but if you're not telling a story with it, I mean, you just have a list of statistics, and how is that going to be able to um, how's that going to be able to compel, a funder, or inspire a funder?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that you're absolutely right that the data points on their face are one thing, right? But that anecdotal, qualitative information that we get from our program counterparts or even our constituents that we're serving is really, really key, right? Storytelling, the ability to document our social impact and outcomes and such, right? And one thing that I want to share is the fact that Bonterra offers a lot of products that are vital in this work. For instance, I was talking with a client who is using social solutions, for instance, to document client outcomes and case management sessions and things of that nature, right? Which are very, very vital, right? Documenting units of service, contact hours. For instance, if you are in behavioral health or legal services, right, you might be capturing the contact hours that you spend with clients in a quarter, in a 6-month period. These are kinds of things that you'll include, right, in this document, but it doesn't do justice if we're not able to lift up what those faces look like and those unsung voices. Now, I don't think that George nor I am saying, you have to necessarily attach a client's name and face to that, right? While some organizations do make it their business to get those permissions and things of that nature, so that they can share those testimonies. If you do so, we're strong proponents of doing so in an assets-based framework, right, that really celebrates the aspirations and ambitions of our constituents, right? And really, like you said, you used the perfect term, humanizing our constituents, right? in their construct, in spite of what challenges or barriers they're facing. I think that that's very important. And I just wanted to mention for some who may not be aware, what some of those tools look like, social solutions, for instance, when you're documenting and tracking organizational or programmatic impact, and even that nuance that renders, that storytelling component. Just wanted to lift that up. Any last words you want to share before we blow out of here?
Yeah, a couple final thoughts. So when you have a comprehensive grant case statement, you may be able to submit a proposal with a short turnaround time that you otherwise may not have had, or you may not be able to pull it off because you know as well as I that sometimes an opportunity comes up and you need to be ready. You need to be ready.
Yeah, be ye ready.
Yeah, and also a grant case statement are also good for getting everyone in your organization as well as any outside partners on the same page and retaining all important institutional knowledge. These are,
Absolutely.
and I know that kind of runs maybe a little contrary to what I said in the beginning about being a living document, but at the same time, those things should be archived and should be kept, and it'll show give your organization's history of what it's been doing. And lastly, I'd say that when you utilize this type of language, it can be utilized for different purposes, like you mentioned before, marrying fundraising with marketing, or with PR, or with fundraising campaign letters, website copy, and more. I mean, it's versatile, multiple uses. So that's what I really like about using strong case statements and keeping them updated, and using them to the best that you can.
No, this has been wonderful, wonderful. So I hope that this was informative to you, good people out there listening. Definitely the winning play. I'm sure this resonates with some of our viewers. For those of you who haven't taken a stab at a case statement, or crafting a case statement, or have a case statement that you might want to update, because as George pointed out, this is a living document. It's iterative. What organizational changes or programmatic changes did your program or agency realize, right, that might need to be updated and translated via that case statement? I want you to think about that. Right? How can you beef up or get more? How can you frame and capture all of what needs to be captured, right, within that case statement? Let's, grab it off the shelf, dust it off, and, rewrite or tweak or whatever we need to do so that we're ready. Because in the words of one of my favorite rappers, a lot of people, might not be familiar with this guy out of California, Sugar Free. He had a song, "If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready." You know that song, George?
I love it.
Sugar
I've
Free.
heard it in years. Yeah.
Right. Listen, because I know y'all out in Detroit, see, Detroit folks rock with the California rap music,
Always have.
Can't really, and I didn't know that growing up in California, how folks in the Midwest really like our hip hop and our rap out there. Like, I know y'all love Bone Thugs and Harmony. Well, they're not from Cali anyway. They repped Cali, but they're really from Ohio,
Right.
But yes, in the words of Sugar Free, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And on that note, good people, we're out just like that. See you next week.
Yeah, Coach Kia. What up? Talking about that good money. What we talking about? We talking about philanthropy. Coach Kia Kroon playing A, B, and a C. It's no fantasy, she can make it reality. Best in the field like a first string athlete. Fundraising and marketing, she can tactical. Tackle your issues with a playbook so your cash can grow. She can show you just what to do. Coach Kia Kroon, when she touch down, it's a W. Coach Kia, put me in the game, Coach. Coach Kia, put me in the game, Coach. Coach Kia, put me in the game, Coach. You an all-star, show me how the game go, 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 go.